Presenting to you
the interactive space for critical and objective open thinking.
Floating in Space with MartianUFO. Produced by MartianUFO Media. The best podcast on air with your hearty host. Catch episodes weekly on Apple and Spotify podcasts.
Hello. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Floating in Space with MartianUFO. I'm MartianUFO, of course, and I just want to take a second to say that it's a nice, moderately starry, kind of breezy, clear night here. The full moon is out, as I love to see. It's a weird phenomenon about the full moon, but I tend to look at it in a positive light for whoever kind of gets their weird days on full moon days or whatever. But I also want to take some time to talk about the fact that I know I spend a lot of time shouting out different groups of people in different areas and really thanking the listeners and everything like this. And it's just a reminder that I really do appreciate the people who take the time to listen, especially when I see the list get longer, of course, and there's different areas on there. And definitely pertaining to the subject matter today, it's giving shout outs to the Americans in different states here, which is going to be Virginia, Washington, Texas, and Connecticut. And then, of course, the Canadians, thank you. The Netherlands, the UK, Ireland, and Spain is what we got so far. So thank you to everybody from those areas. Share it with your friends, your family, if you think that the subject matter pertains to them of my show and whatnot. And I think just another reminder too, because I'm noticing a lot of things, and it's funny that I speak about certain things, cancel culture and this and that, and certain things are starting to happen now, but I was prepared for it. Of course, I knew what it was when you start a platform and you put yourself out there. Certain people love you, certain people hate you. It is what it is. And I think it's interesting to note, of course, that, my show is not going to be everybody's cup of tea. The topics that I talk about probably aren't going to be interesting to every single person. And a lot of people, might just not even be interested or might not want to hear it. And that's all good. Like I said before, I love the supporters and I love the haters even more. That fuels the motivation, fuels the fire. And it's always good to have a balance of both. I think it's healthy or whatever. But yeah, man, I'm going to get into it. What I was going to talk about today really was the subject of Breonna Taylor. And before I get into it, I'll take some time to send condolences, even though, they won't really actually hear it from me. But condolences to the families of Breonna Taylor, of course, George Floyd, and Ahmaud Arbery. And really, the reason that I'm talking about this is because I know that some people may have followed the story, and I looked into it a little bit, and I wanted to speak to the misinformation and just kind of go over the facts and help correct the story. And it's interesting because the story, it pertains to the people in the States probably the most, because this happened in the U.S. and she was from Louisville, Kentucky. So from anybody there who was really, it's close to home, who was in the area and things like this. So when I first heard of this story, it was, I think the story came out as the insinuation that she was asleep in bed when the police officers showed up to her door, and they ended up shooting up her apartment and basically killing her in her sleep. And I just want to say that information, it's false. For sure. The police did mess up. It was a botched raid, but the story that came up about it was incorrect, and I think that it's just irresponsible. It's disingenuous. It's spreading misinformation, especially for certain public figures, certain athletes and celebrities who are coming out now and speaking about it, especially about the fact that, yes, say her name, but then talk about what actually happened as well. Don't just don't sweep the real story under the rug, and realize that there was certainly an initiative after with this, because let's say for a group like Black Lives Matter, for example. Black Lives Matter, beyond the actual phrase itself, is a group, right? They're a fund, and they make money basically off of the phrase, off of the commercialization of it, which I'm not going to get into too much, but really just to speak about these facts, to get into the facts and to talk about the key people, who they are, and why they are important in this story. So Breonna Taylor, of course, Jamarcus Glover, who was her ex at the time, supposed drug dealer, maybe a suspect of a drug investigation by the Louisville, Kentucky Police Department. And then her current boyfriend at the time, Mr. Kenneth Walker. And so, let's see, it said that she had a passive kind of friendship type relationship with Jamarcus, Mr. Glover at this time, that they kind of, I don't know if they still saw each other, if it was like a working relationship, or if something was going on, but they had seen him. They had specifically spotted him at her apartment 45 days and 30 days prior to the raid. And in the first incident, he was picking up a UPS package at her apartment, and I guess they photographed him, and obviously since he's the suspect of a drug investigation. And the second time, he was seen allegedly using her vehicle. So you could say that they were obviously, comfortable enough with each other that they might have still been talking, might have possibly been doing business, maybe. And so the police had enough reason or indication to think that Jamarcus might have been using her apartment as a stash spot. He might have had drugs there. He might have had weapons there, possibly money made off the sale of narcotics or whatever. And so there was, reason enough to believe that something may have been happening, which gave them enough reason to go and get warrants. They had, let's see here. They got 5 warrants signed by a judge in Louisville to perform the no-knock warrant, which is kind of the issue at hand when it says that, they just showed up, didn't announce themselves, and ended up shooting, went in and just shot up the place. It didn't happen like that. The first piece of misinformation is the fact that she wasn't alone. She was with her current boyfriend at the time, Kenneth Walker, at that time. And when the police showed up there, they were under the impression that she would be alone, because they had already went out and identified where Jamarcus Glover was that night. And since they had his location, and in the police report, I think it said that because she didn't have any children, they didn't think that there would be anybody at the house. They thought that they would show up, they would perform the search warrant, whatever. They wouldn't find they'd either find something, wouldn't find anything, and that they would leave. And it didn't end up that way, and we're going to talk about why. So, this is getting into Mr. Kenneth Walker now. Who is Mr. Kenneth Walker? And why was he at her place? So supposedly, he lived with her. They lived together. But Mr. Glover, Jamarcus, he had his registered address was Breonna Taylor's address, which gave them, I guess, more information, more indication that, hey, they might have still some type of passive relationship with each other, because obviously he's either staying with her or he goes there frequently. And it says that they had the 5 warrants leading up to the incident at the time, that he was using her car, that he was picking up UPS. And really, what happened when the police show up at Breonna Taylor's house, or her apartment, and it says that they actually knocked on the door 3 times, and that after they did announce themselves, and Breonna and Mr. Kenneth Walker were apparently in the bed sleeping, and they were woken up by the knocking on the door. Apparently, Kenneth said that he did not hear the announcement, and he wasn't aware of, the fact that it was police officers at the door. But when him and Breonna got up and entered the hallway, so he's a registered gun owner, and he had his gun with him, and he decided to bring his gun to the hallway to check and see who was at the door. So at this time, you can understand that Mr. Kenneth Walker has enough understanding or knowledge about his surroundings that, he might need to have his weapon on him. The fact that he would carry it and bring it to the door, obviously, tells me that he knew enough about the place that he would need to defend himself, might need to defend her. Maybe the spot was being used as a drug spot or a stash spot or a money spot, something. But anyways, they enter the hallway, and I guess I don't know if it's important to remind people that, with no knock warrants, the police aren't actually required to announce themselves, based on the information that they had, and the fact that, it was also said that they showed up to the wrong address, that apparently it was the wrong address that they showed up at, and that they shot up this girl in bed. That's wrong. That's incorrect information. It was the right address. Her name was on the warrant, and then Jamarcus's Glover's name was on the warrant. And so the police, at this time, decide to enter the apartment. So at the same time that they're entering, Kenneth Walker sees them, and he, in that moment, I guess he fears for his life, and he ends up firing a shot towards the floor, but he hits the leg of one of the officers, hits him in the femoral artery. And so the officer is, at the moment, he's starting to bleed out, basically. And basically, that when you shoot at the police officers or when you pose a threat, they're obviously going to shoot back. So the police officers reacted to him shooting first and shot back, and in the return fire, I think 22 shots were fired. He didn't get hit by any of the shots, but 8 of the shots hit Breonna Taylor, unfortunately. And I think of the officers, one of them fired about 10 shots, so he fired the most, and he got fired. And I think the other 2 were not arrested. And I think the investigation just went into it now. And I think I want to talk about just my opinion a little bit, because, the fact that when it was coming out, the information about it, and people were, it was kind of coming out around the same time of the George Floyd tape and the Ahmaud Arbery tape being released. And so it's important that when I mention those, people almost kind of use this like it was the same kind of incident. but it wasn't based on the information, based on the facts that, people can go and look up these facts and find the correct articles that have, what actually happened and statements made by Kenneth Walker himself. And the fact that, I want to be careful with what I say here. Gotta be careful. This is touchy stuff, definitely. The fact that people were, I don't want to say hyping it up, but rallying around the fact that, yes, she died, and it was definitely a mistake, a boss trade, that, and she didn't have to die, very unfortunate. But nobody came out and really said, hey, this is actually what happened, was talking about the facts. And I was thinking, I listened to a video, someone talking about it, and they said that they didn't believe that an investigation would actually take place unless there was enough political pressure or too much political pressure. And I think that's what happened, because in terms of the officers, the one that was fired, maybe they could try him, but the ones that weren't arrested, that are still working, I think it's important to mention the fact that, this is different. This isn't the same kind of case as the other two. The fact that they didn't just go there and shoot up a black girl who was sleeping in bed, that there was actually a shot fired, an officer's life was threatened, to the fact that he almost died. He lived, actually. He didn't bleed out. He lived. And this is what happened as a result, but people put out the story that it was another, black shooting, another black killing, and it's important to mention the facts in this case. And I don't want to take any sides or whatever, but I am of the opinion, I guess, that besides, maybe shitty training or not necessarily having all the right information before going out and executing the warrant, maybe the other officers should be fired as well. But I don't know if it's fair to say that any of them should be tried based on the information and based on the facts of what happened. So going back into the information, as we said, 8 shots hit Breonna and none of them hit Kenneth. And so at this time, I think he lied to the officers, or lied in his initial statement, and said that Breonna was actually the one who had the gun and was the one who fired the shot. And so, he already is lying after she is just passed away, just been killed, basically. And so he was at fault for that mistake. And I think, again, speaking about the fact that there's so much emotion around this case, that, I watched the NBA games, and a lot of the guys have say her name on the back of their jerseys, and Breonna Taylor and all this kind of stuff. And it's important because she, again, I gotta say, she didn't have to be lost like that. But it's just interesting that the information came out the way that, it did, and that nobody really spoke about what actually happened, that, the police officers were fired at first. And if anybody knows anything about police training or whatever, if police officers are actually fired at, or if someone poses a threat to them in terms of holding a gun or anything like this, when they shoot back, they don't just, fire one shot or a couple of shots. It's the training that tells them that they're supposed to empty the clip, basically. And all the officers do that. So then you have the result of what happened, basically. Because I think that it said that, in their fire, one of the bullets ended up going into one of the other apartments, and it was basically real messy, really a sloppy job on their part. So that's where the shitty training comes in, where, I think kind of fast forwarding a little bit, as a result of everything that happened, they ended no-knock warrants in Louisville in June. I'm pretty sure they took that out of what the officers are allowed to conduct. So no more knock warrants. That's really what happened quickly as a result of the case. But now, we're looking at an investigation. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the investigation of these officers, if they're all fired, if they're arrested. We'll see. But, Kenneth, Mr. Walker, he was initially arrested for attempted murder on one of the officers, but a grand jury dismissed the charge because, a bug here, my bad. Grand jury dismissed the charge because during the investigation that they were doing, the police department and testimony, the information that they were giving to the courts, they failed to mention that the arrest of Mr. Walker was actually linked to the Breonna Taylor case. And so they were accused of withholding information, basically. And the grand jury decided to throw out the case for that reason. There's a bit more information here. There's not really too much. Basically, I think I got to the point of what happened and talking about why it happened, really, because this is something that happened a little bit a while ago now, and I just felt, the conviction. I felt like I needed to speak about it, especially because the investigation, the story about the investigation starting to happen now. And, I didn't think that an investigation would happen based on the information that I read when I went and I found out about it. And I was like, okay, well, it's definitely not what people are saying it is. Because even when I talked to people that I know about it, they said that they were under the impression that it was that story, that, a girl got shot in bed while she was sleeping. And that's not what it was. And I just want to remind people that's not what it was. And for, anybody who's listening, it's important to, spread the real information, to remind people that the facts matter, even in the wake of trying to, what do I say here? In the wake of trying to respect her and remember her respectfully, you got to remember that not everything happens the way that the media says it does. That as soon as the story happens, the information that's coming out right away might not always be the right information. That when you find out the right information, you got to remember that it's important to, just correct and to try and get the facts straight on the story. And at the end of the day, rest in peace again to Breonna Taylor. And I think, I didn't really want to go too long on this topic, on this subject, but just to get the story straight. And man, I thank y'all again for being here with me on another episode of Floating in Space. And I hope you guys enjoy your night, and we'll see you again soon.